welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. This week you've got myself, Collin, and I'm joined by Nick and Brennan as we break down a lot. There's not a lot going on at the box office, so it's a little bit of an unusual podcast, and we'll probably kind of be in this format for a little while longer. But yeah, there's not really anything going on at the box office. The major movie chains in the States have closed their doors for the time being. And there's not much of a box office. A lot of the movies that were in release are moving to streaming. We saw that with Onward, with The Hunt and The Invisible Man this week, and I'm sure we'll see it with some more movies coming out that aren't getting pulled. I think we'll see a lot of those smaller releases end up on Netflix and other similar services. So yeah, not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, it really sucks because even like Box Office Mojo is like, yeah, we don't have data. Like, we're sorry, guys. Like, we'll get it whenever. It's really a bummer. Like, even see like the latest info they have is for Thursday, and it's like Onward led in the U.S. with 33,000, which is just like that's like less than one theater like in like a really popular area. It's really sad, and we're like every movie's getting pulled now. I'm pretty sure April is almost gone completely, so it's gonna be like this for a really really long time.
Yeah, I think the most shocking thing to look at is going on to the most recent data we have, which is Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, just kind of this past week there, and looking at the per theater average. Onward's per theater average was $7. Invisible Man $5. The Way Back had a per theater average of $2. Like, these are just shocking numbers, and I think that probably is because of a lot of the theaters closed their doors, but it didn't fully register potentially, so it didn't bring the theater count down. But we still see that the theater averages are $2, $3, $4 for a lot of these films. And even looking at, this is the crazy thing, looking at this exact day last week, Onward had a 98% drop. All these movies here, 98, 97, 99. It's just a crazy thing to see at the box office. And I do hope that we get these weekend numbers because I just want to see how low the numbers are. I think it'd be really eerie to see.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's a very weird, unprecedented time as there's nothing going on. Like, it's not just the movie theaters, but most of the world is just kind of been put on pause for the time being, and we're still trying to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, it's a scary time. I think we're all figuring this out day by day. It's very very strange.
So, since we can't really talk about the box office, we'll talk about the closest we can get to the box office. Today we're going to talk about Netflix. We'll talk about the top 10 movies that have been streaming on Netflix this past week. A few of them probably won't surprise you due to what's going on with the coronavirus. We'll talk about the Razzies a little bit, and then we'll do some recommendations and talk about some movies that we're diving into, because the one nice thing about everyone being in quarantine for who knows how long is that there's plenty of time to watch movies. So taking advantage of that. But as for Netflix, so the top 10 movies on Netflix this week were The Spencer Confidential in the number 1 spot, 2012 in the number 2 spot, Outbreak at number 3, Aftermath number 4, Lost Girls number 5, The Platform at number 6, The Assignment number 7, Angry Birds Movie 2, number 8, number 9 was Space Jam, and number 10 was 3022. So Spencer being the top one doesn't really surprise me a ton, just because that is their newest release, and since people can't really go to the box office, it's easy to stay in and chill out with a movie that, even though I haven't really heard many positives about it, is at least new and there.
Do you guys believe the Netflix top 10 at this point? I feel like I'm getting more skeptical week by week because all of it's like, oh, new Netflix movie, another Netflix movie. This, like, even The Platform, which is, it's just like a Spanish thriller. It's like I can't really see like a random person in like middle America being like, all right, let's throw this on. Like, I don't know, it just seems so weird. And like The Assignment, like, I don't even know what that movie is. I think Michelle Rodriguez is in that movie. Like, why is that in the top 10? Like, I even like what the fuck is 3022? Like, I'm so confused by all of this. I don't understand.
I think that I personally do believe the top 10, just because I think with Netflix they push their original movies to the front of the kind of the interface all the time. Like,
That's true.
When Yeah, when you log in, like it's the first thing you'll see. They have the banners for all the Netflix original stuff. So I have a feeling, just because that's kind of what's being pushed out to the front more, and you might have to search more for some of these other things. I do have faith in their top 10. The one in Canada is a little different. Spencer Confidential's holding on at number 2, but same as last week, Contagion's up there at the top. Sorry, last week it was 3, but now it's at number 1, and it's kind of just sticking there here in Canada. I know it's not on the Netflix in the U.S. right now, but yeah, I do think it's just because they throw their original content at kind of the front of their interface, and a lot of the times the little N, it's kind of, I don't know why, but it seems like I've talked to a few different people that they see the little N and they're not drawn to it more, but they I don't know, it's just something about it that people seem to click on it.
Yeah, and I feel like there's at least in friends that I'll talk to that have seen movies like The Spencer Confidential, there's just some curiosity there, because I mean you do have, like you said, Brennan, you do have a little bit more validation, I guess, because it is a Netflix movie and you're obviously on the Netflix service. But it's also just kind of mindless and something to watch. I don't think these movies are being watched by people that are actually watching the movie. I think it's more just, oh, I'm gonna throw this on in the background while I do laundry or cook dinner or whatever.
Yeah, it's really true. I guess there are a lot of this does make sense because you have stuff like Space Jam and Angry Birds 2, which I think has been on there for a couple weeks now. But like those make sense because you're like, oh, kids in the room, throw those on. I guess I'm really just fascinated by like things like Aftermath and like The Assignment and 3022, which I've actually just never heard of until just now. I find that really strange when I agree that like Netflix really pushes their original stuff, and that's why Spencer Confidential is so big right now. But it's just so strange when you see like these little things pop up there, and I feel like there's a couple of those every single week where, I don't know if Brennan, you remember when we were talking about this at the beginning, when we started monitoring this, it was like that movie, that little science fiction movie Freaks was on like the top 10. Like it just like, it feels like there's just like these really strange, bizarre choices that people seem to glom onto for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to look at. And you said 2012 is number 2 there in the U.S. right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of neat because you're seeing a lot of these kind of post-apocalyptic or kind of virus-oriented with outbreak movies kind of trending upwards right now, and I think it's interesting. People kind of want to not fantasize, but they want to sort of embellish the situation a little bit and kind of really watch what total destruction could be, I guess.
So I guess out of any of these, which is the one you're most likely to watch out of this top 10?
Probably Lost Girls. So I almost went to see that I'm gonna, be that guy that pulls out Sundance, but I almost went to see that at Sundance, and like it looked intriguing enough that I'd be like, yeah, I'd watch that if it was on Netflix, but not enough that I was like, yes, this is my priority tonight. So maybe that one. I mean, I've seen Outbreak before and I know I like it, so it could be one of those.
Honestly, I would be helping out this list a little because I'd either pick Outbreak or 2012. I don't know. Back when I was a kid, I just love seeing the just that crumbling world and the massive tsunamis and earthquakes. It's pretty epic to see the special effects bonanza that is 2012. So I would probably pick that or Outbreak because I've never seen it and I think it'd be a interesting watch.
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
I have a very bad memory of 2012. So when that movie came out, I think it was around like Thanksgiving time. Whatever it was, we went to go see my aunt and uncle and cousin. And so we got there and we got like lunch at Arby's on the way there. And we are going to go see 2012 that afternoon. I don't know why that was our first day thing to go do, but all the guys were going to go see 2012. And so like we got ready to leave for it. And I was like, Dad, I'm not feeling good. I don't think I should go. And he was like, no, we're going to the movies. Like, you need to come with us. We can't just leave you here. Because my aunt and uncle live like in the middle of nowhere. And so I was like, well, I really don't feel good. And so like eventually they were like, no, you're going. So we get in the car. We're like 20 minutes out and I just lose my lunch all over my uncle's brand new truck.
Oh no.
And that is my memory of 2012.
So I mean the catchphrase of the film is "We were warned," so I think that sits well with your story right there too.
I tried to warn
Honestly,
them, but they wouldn't listen.
that I'll be honest here. That's one of my guilty pleasure movies. I don't know. Like there's some movies out there you know they're not great, but you just love to see just the special effects absolute fiasco. And I love seeing a crazy conspiracy theorist Woody Harrelson living at Yellowknife, I think it is, or what's it called again? The volcano.
Yep.
Like Yellowstone.
Yellowstone?
Yeah, Yellowstone. Yeah, Yellowstone. Yeah, Yellowstone. Do you guys remember his character at all? Like, or did you ever see it, Colin? Did you ever end up seeing it?
I did go again like 2 days later.
Okay.
After I was feeling better, and I have vague memories, like they're on giant boats at some point, right?
Yep.
And like I'm pretty sure John Cusack like doesn't save his actual wife and then gets with his ex-wife, or maybe she doesn't save the new husband. I don't know. I remember like flashes of it, but not much.
I just will always remember Woody Harrelson as this conspiracy theorist with long hair, long beard, just screaming crazy shit. It's so funny.
Isn't John Cusack like a reporter or like a novelist in that movie?
Yeah,
Isn't that what he is?
yeah.
I feel like I just remember him like in like total just like awful dialogue, being like, "Hey, I am a Pulitzer Prize novelist. You need to listen to me because I have things to say." And I'm like, "Oh no."
There's quite the. I remember, if I remember correctly, it had quite the cast, but those types of movies usually do.
I mean, it was also the fifth highest grossing movie of 2009, and I mean, when your competition is Avatar,
Was
that's
it really?
pretty solid? Yeah.
What is wrong with us? What is happening?
It was only beaten by Avatar, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Wow.
What a time.
I think like I remember that movie having a lot of intrigue. Just I remember people wanting to see it, like just out of hype for the end of the world.
Yeah, because that
That's
was
so
like
weird.
in the Mayan calendar craze too,
Yeah.
when it was really starting to pick up. So I
That
mean,
movie
I
was
guess
the movie's, oh my god. The movie's 2 hours and 40 minutes.
2012 I guess 2012 at one point was socially relevant. I don't really think it is now.
I think it's the last Roland Emmerich film that will be, or that was, I think, will be very commercially successful, because since then he's had a really rough go of it.
Oh yeah, I remember Independence Day Resurgence.
Oh
That was a great
God.
time.
I mean, he got Midway, which also just absolutely bombed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so he really, I think 2012 was his last, kind of his last big box office hit.
Is this the longest that anyone's ever spent talking about 2012 since 2009? I feel like it is.
I think so. Like, has this been on Netflix the whole time, or did it just like was it something where people were like, "Oh, this is on Netflix, we should watch it," or was Netflix like, "Oh, people are gonna be hankering for nice helping of 2012 here pretty soon. Let's bring it back."
I see Roland Emmerich as, I think his vision of films and blockbusters is stuck in the late 90s with his Independence Day. So I don't see him. I don't see him really having much more success at all.
My favorite part of, I totally forgot that I saw Midway, and that was like, what, 4 months ago? That came out in like
Yep.
November. My favorite part of that movie was at the end when they're about to drop the final bomb on the Japanese, and what's his face, the villain from Deadpool, what's his name? Oh, Ed Skrein. He goes in his cartoonish Brooklyn accent. He's like, "This is for the pearl." Drops the bomb. Everything explodes. I feel like that's Roland Emmerich in a nutshell. It's incredible.
Pretty much.
That's the best dialogue I've ever heard. I'm
It's
crying
amazing.
right now just thinking about it.
It was beautiful, beautiful stuff.
So, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting just to like see what's peaking every week, and it's like even with TV shows, because you have like, I feel like movies are going to fluctuate a lot more, but I think number 2 and 3 on our list right now. Like I think 2012 and Outbreak will be top of the list for a while. I think everything else could shuffle a lot more. Like I know Lost Girls is pretty new, Spencer Confidential is pretty new, but I think everything else could kind of rotate in and out as we get deeper and deeper into quarantine.
Yeah, I feel like there's gonna be some. I feel like it hasn't quite happened yet, but I feel like there's a big opportunity for Netflix to have that's like kind of like a Bird Box craze of a film. I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't really know what their schedule is coming out, but I feel like that's kind of on tap for them if they nail it right. Maybe they since they just bought the Lovebirds from Paramount, maybe they kind of figure out how to throw that um, into their release schedule smartly. I don't know, but I feel like it's coming in some way.
I would agree. I think that we're definitely. I mean, everyone's kind of itching for just something to do and just something to see and just some sort of entertainment at this point. And I do think while everyone's kind of stuck inside for the time being, I think that there is a great opportunity for them to drop something that really catches fire. I think that we will see something to the likes of that. Probably not the same scale of Bird Box. I just don't know if there's ever going to be a craze like that again. But definitely something in that vein.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting to watch all the trends. And like I think this is weirdly coming at a like to the benefit of Netflix, who is like facing a lot of competition as we get further into the year. And you have HBO Max coming out in like a month and a half. You have the Peacock coming out later in the year, and I think a few of those other smaller services. But right now is just a big boom time for Netflix. And I mean, yeah, Disney Plus is out there and Hulu, but they still have like the dominant spot in the market. And I think this will weirdly end up benefiting them more than anybody.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to a point soon where, like, even like I was watching ESPN today when like they have literally nothing to talk about now, and like they're like gonna spend like I think for like Peyton Manning's birthday, they're gonna spend like 7 hours talking about him, which is just like kill me now. Like, what is that? So like we're gonna get to a point here in like maybe like a week or two where like literally nothing's happening like in the world, like it's all focused on the coronavirus. So it's just gonna be for one that's just really scary to think about, and I hope everyone stays safe through all of this. And but it's just like there's gonna be something really strange that pops up like film wise where like either like something like a really cool meme happens or something and it goes nuts. Like there's gonna be something really strange that just pops out of nowhere. And maybe it's 2012. Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be neat to see what happens. But yeah, you're right, all the sports channels are just kind of playing classic game reruns. I know that here in Canada, most of our local sports channels are obviously with the Raptors winning their first title last year, they're just replaying the entire playoffs. um, uh, and then kind of besides that, I know that with the recent drops of a lot of the movies that are in the theaters now on demand and VOD, like The Invisible Man, The Hunt, other films like that. I know that my family, we just watched Invisible Man the other night. So I'm sure that's gonna kind of open another avenue as well, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, so that is kind of what's going on with Netflix. And then the Razzies were also this past week. And yeah, let's celebrate some bad movies. So I mean, Cats was kind of the movie that everybody had their eye on with the Razzies this year, but I think it's really easy to underestimate just how many bad blockbusters, especially, but just we had a lot of bad movies last year.
When you think of the Razzies, you have to like you could always see a movie and kind of picture that as something that should be at the Razzies, but to be at the Razzies, you need to at least be a little bit popular. You need to be a film that was somewhat seen and then hated on, not just seen by a few. So Cats is definitely the perfect pick for this year's Razzies, kind of just to sweep the awards because it was so popular. It took over the film world for a little bit, and that was just a perfect match for the 2020 Razzies.
It really was. Like it's like everyone knew that was coming. It's just so easy. It's just because it's fucking Cats, and it's already become like the ironic like classic. Like there's before like the coronavirus kind of halted everything. There was already like midnight screenings of it showing, and the movie came out like what 2 months ago. Like it's already like at a fever pitch of like people like are like so fascinated with this thing. I guess I love there's one of my favorite bits of this. I don't normally love the Razzies because I do feel like you said, I feel like they just dunk on like really easy targets, and I feel like it's kind of easy and whatnot. But one of my favorite award they gave out was for worst screen combo, and the winner was any two half feline / half human hairballs and cats. That's really really funny. And there have another one in there. One of the nominees was Jason Derulo and his CGI neutered bulge, which is really funny. I really appreciate when they get really weird with it. Just like stuff like that, I think is just really, really funny.
One thing I wanted to
cats,
point out was, yeah, continue. Yeah.
Speaking of cats, have you guys heard about the butthole cut, which apparently exists?
I don't want to talk about this. No.
But as of, I think it was like last November even, there were VFX editors that were tasked with removing the CGI buttholes that other VFX artists had put on earlier in the film's development.
Oh no. Oh no.
I feel like that would have been my favorite movie of all time if those were left in. Can you imagine? Like, it's already like one of the weirdest movies of, like the last decade. Like, can you imagine if that was still in there? Like, that's just like horrifying. Like, I just like gouge my eyes out now. I don't even want to think about that.
I just want to know who were these people that were creating these? Like somewhere, somebody has a model of this on their computer.
I feel so bad because there's like kind of one of the unspoken things in Hollywood is kind of how terribly like visual effects artists are treated. So like there was just like someone like in like a dark, cold room just like animating CGI cat butts for months. Just like think about that. Like every time you complain about your job, just think about that. Someone was just making Rebel Wilson's butthole in cats.
Oh. One of my favorite of the Razzies was John Travolta picking up that worst actor for The Fanatic, and Trading Paint. I haven't heard of that film, but The Fanatic is the one that he definitely got that award for. I mean, that was great. That was wonderful.
I feel like that movie's already kind of become like a cult thing too, because it's just so weird and hilarious. And there's like that one scene where John Travolta gets into Devon Sawa's house and he's just like prancing around with like moose antlers on. It's like what the hell is happening in this movie? It's such a weird little oddity.
I loved. I don't know if you guys saw it, but like, I mean, whatever, all the power to him, I guess. But there's the article that came out that he was fiercely defending the script and the film.
Yeah, I think I saw a little bit about that.
Oh no, poor John Travolta. Well, I don't know, but
you wouldn't expect anything less. I mean, he's known for being kind of a bad picker, right? So I don't know. It's just kind of a sad little story there. But Cats took home Worst Picture, which obviously we all expected. Felt a little bit bad though for Tom Hooper to get Worst Director, because hasn't he won Best Director in the past before? At the Oscars?
Yeah, for
King's Speech, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of an absolute 365 or 180 for him, sorry, rather, and that's kind of a sad slip 10 years later.
There's nothing he can't do. That's what he's proved to everybody.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to look at it.
What did you guys make of the Razzie Redeemer Awards in there? I feel like Brennan and I were kind of bitter that Adam Sandler didn't win for Uncut Gems, but I don't know. It's kind of cool to see Eddie Murphy get in there and win. I feel like he was kind of one of the more like kind of less spoken kind of big winners of the year, just because Dolomite didn't really become like the big like awards movie that I think Netflix was hoping to be. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it should have gone to either him or Sandler, because you look at like Eddie Murphy's last decade has just been depressing. Because he's had Mr. Church, which was like his big Oscar-y push a few years ago that didn't really pan out. But before that, he had like 1,000 Words and Tower Heist, Imagine That, and Meet Dave. Just like a lot of movies that were just completely awful. plus like the last two Shrek movies. Like he's just had a rough go of it, and so I think he earned it, and I think you could easily put Adam Sandler like in the Redeemer category, and argue for him having earned it with all the horrible Netflix movies he's done the past few years. But like honestly, Eddie Murphy's like losing streak is almost 2 decades long if you don't count the first two Shrek movies.
And Dreamgirls. He got some good recognition for that film.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
Yeah.
But no, it has been a pretty bad decade for Eddie Murphy, and he just doesn't really act anymore. I mean, he's kind of chilling. So it was great to see him come back in Dolomite, and I really did like Dolomite. I thought it was a great movie, but I would have loved to see Adam Sandler get it because they beat up on him every single year at the Razzies. So I was really thinking this would be the year that they that they see him there in the Redeemer category, and they're like, you know what, let's make it fun. Let's give him one because every year we give him one for the other kind of side of the table there with the worst actor, and even he won worst actress for Jack and Jill. But good props to Eddie Murphy. He deserved it as well. But I was really hoping Adam would have taken that.
Yeah, and so that is the Razzies. Which I mean, we may not have any movies for the Razzies next year because we've only released like 10 this year. So
the same movies that are the Razzies will be at the Oscars.
Will be the Oscars. Yeah. That's
What's
gonna
the
be quite the twist.
What's the big winner this year at the Razzies? Would it be Doolittle, I guess?
Doolittle for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the only like big time like big flop movie that people are dunking on as far like this year so far. I can't really think of anything else.
I feel like Sonic could lean that direction a little bit, but even that Sonic wasn't as terrible as it could have been.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I have a good one. I've been putting off seeing this movie for I think 2 months now, but the same director did The Haunting of Sharon Tate, which is all over the Razzies. He made a movie that came out in January called the Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. So I'm sure that's just awful in so many ways. So that maybe that throws in there as well. Other than that, yeah, I think it just Doolittle wins everything. Best.
I think
best dragon fart or something.
Call of the Wild could have a Razzies presence as well.
Oh, that'd be a good one.
It'll be those two fighting for every award. So it'll be Disney versus Disney.
As it should be.
As is everything else in this world.
Yeah, so with that, we'll move on to some film recommendations. So these are movies that either we've seen here recently with our extra quarantine time, or that are just, since there's not new stuff coming out, you might as well check these out. They'll be worth your watch. So let's just kind of go a little bit round robin. So Nick, you want to give us one of your recommendations?
Yeah, so there's gonna be a trend for all of my movies, weirdly. So they're all I don't even think I planned this at first, but all of my movies feature Christopher Abbott, who's a really good actor that I've kind of become kind of obsessed with recently. Weirdly, I think he's one of the best actors working right now. He was on Girls for like the first 2 seasons, then he kind of he abruptly left because it seemed like he had creative differences with Lena Dunham. So ever since, he's just been doing a lot of really interesting kind of off beaten path indie movies, where a lot of the movies he's in, he plays like psychopaths, and they're really fascinating and interesting. I think it was probably fresh in my mind because I saw Possessor at Sundance this year, which is holy shit, and I can't wait for that movie to come out. It's one of the most insane things ever, and he's the main character in that. But the first movie I want to point out here is A Most Violent Year, which I had never seen before. But it was kind of a big A24 release. Christopher Abbott plays kind of a bit part in this movie he's just a kind of ne'er do well who's kind of just doing crimes around the city. But this movie really focuses on Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. I feel like it's kind of like one of like the forgotten like great performances by both of them. They're both just really good in this movie. I think this movie came out in 2014, but I don't love this movie. I think it's really, really good. I think a few tweaks. It's a little frustrating because you see where a few tweaks would have made this movie like kind of incredible. But it's really interesting to look at it as it's kind of like the origin story of like a Godfather-esque mob boss, where it's basically Oscar Isaac he's he's big in the oil business in New York, and he's working on kind of building his oil empire, and he wants to do everything by the books. He wants to be a very honorable man, and he has all these like discussions about how he wants to stay very honorable and throughout all of this. But he's doing this all throughout what is a massive crime wave in the New York area, which is where Christopher Abbott comes into the picture. But basically, it's him reckoning with kind of trying to stay to his morals when all that seems to be crumbling around in society. It's a really good movie. It's on Netflix right now, so I really hope everyone checks that out, because I think it's really interesting, even if it's not like the greatest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. So for me, I've been using this time to kind of dive into directors that I'm not as familiar with as I'd like to be. So I started with Paul Thomas Anderson. So 2/3 of my recommendations are going to be PTA. But I'm going to start off with Boogie Nights. So this is one that I've been wanting to watch for a while, because this is kind of what brought PTA to the forefront. He did a short of it in the 80s, I believe, and then eventually was able to turn that into a movie. And it's just wild. Like, this movie, I really appreciate just how big it is, and no pun intended. But I really appreciate just like how PTA just drops you into the world that's going on. So you just enter with Mark Wahlberg at this nightclub, and you meet Julianne Moore and Burt Reynolds, and Heather Graham is in there on roller skates, and you just are thrown into all these characters, and the movie really gets the most out of all these side characters. So it doesn't really need to be about anybody but Mark Wahlberg, but everybody gets somewhat of a meaningful arc, and they all just really balance each other out, and every character plays well against all the other characters. And I didn't have any problems with this movie. Like, it was just incredibly well put together.
Yeah, I've been really meaning to check that out soon and really get into his filmography. I watched Phantom Thread the other day. That's a really good one too. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting into his as well. But my first one is called Perfect Blue. It's actually a Japanese film, animated film from the late 90s, 1997, directed by Satoshi Kon, and it's a film about a singer who it's a incredibly trippy film. So like, the reason I'd recommend it is just if you really want to watch it's pretty short. It's only about an hour and 20 minutes. It's about a singer. She quits her band and she goes into acting, and she's trying to like get rid of her kind of good girl persona that she had while she was a singer. And you kind of have there's like this weird double take that you have to do throughout the film, because there's someone that seems to be stalking her, but you don't know if it's in her head or if it's in real life. It's a completely trippy animated film, and about halfway through it just goes off the rails in the best way possible, and just goes through these weird different turning of events. It's a really good film, though. I would recommend it. Perfect Blue is what it's called. I rented it on YouTube for like $3, so I mean it's definitely worth it. But no, that's one that I would heavily recommend. I just saw some people kind of tweeting about it, so I checked it out, and it was definitely worth it.
All right. And then, Nick, if you want to take it away with your second recommendation.
Yeah, so later this week I went deeper into Christopher Abbott, and I was like, you know what? Well, I'd watched First Man earlier, and he was in that, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, let's just go all in. Like, why not? I have time. Let's just get super weird with it all and just watch watch a bunch of movies with him in it. So my next movie is called Sweet Virginia, it's streaming on Netflix right now. I know, at least in the States, but it came out in 2017, I think. But it stars Christopher Abbott as basically he's just one of his psychopath characters, and the first scene in this movie is just unbelievably harrowing, where he just comes into a bar after it's closed at night. There's a couple, like the owners are playing cards in one of the tables. He just comes in. They tell him to leave, and he comes back with a gun and shoots them all dead, and then the title comes on screen. So it's like, oh well, this is just incredibly unsettling. And then the other big star of the movie is John Bernthal. He's in there. He owns the Sweet Virginia Motel, and a lot of this movie is sort of about how either trauma or just people in general, they kind of interconnect in these small towns, and things seem to linger around for a while. So he used to be a bullfighter, now retired. He had a head injury, so he's just working in the motel, and he's just dealing with a lot of stuff. And then Chris Roberts just kind of going around town, just doing incredibly psychopathic things. And he's just so interesting to watch, because he just seems like he's just gonna like punch a hole in the wall like at any second. It's so good. But yeah, it's a lot of it. It's the movie's sort of meandering, but it's just this really just good little thriller about just kind of trauma and just kind of running into like things over and over again and kind of reckoning with your past. It's really terrific. And yeah, so I said it's on Netflix, so give it a shot. I think there's something worthwhile for everyone in this movie.
All right, and then my second recommendation is also PTA. So kind of like you're doing, I'm just following one person and sticking with them. So I saw There Will Be Blood, which is also on Netflix, which I've been sort of familiar with. Like I knew that Paul Dano's role was like one of the big highlights of that movie, and I can concur with that. Just the way that Eli Sunday and Daniel just play off of each other, and just like how they steal power from each other and then just make a fool out of one another throughout the entire duration of this movie is just beautiful to watch. Like it's probably one of my favorite protagonist antagonist relationships. Like it's just phenomenally done.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies ever. I fucking love that movie. It's so good. I think honestly that might be one of the best lead performances I've ever seen from Daniel Day-Lewis. Just absolutely just chewing scenery like mad, just with that crazy. Just I'm Daniel Plainview. I fucking love that movie so much. It's so good.
That's on your Letterboxd favorites, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think it's. I switch back and forth between either The Master or There Will Be Blood as my favorite PTA, and consequently one of my favorite movies ever. I really love, and it's weird because I haven't seen Boogie Nights, and I'm probably gonna knock that out like this week because we have so much time. But yeah, There Will Be Blood is so good. I've seen it so many times, even just like clips of it. I just want to get to because there's so many powerful scenes in there that I could just watch over and over again.
Fantastic. I'm going to go off on a tangent here and kind of turn the tables a little bit. I'm not really following any sort of pattern like you guys are, but I'm going to recommend real quick a Canadian film called Bon Cop, Bad Cop. Translation, Good Cop, Bad Cop. For a little bit of context, up here in Canada, there's a real sort of tension between the French people in Quebec and the English in the rest of the country, and that tension comes kind of full throttle here in this. An English cop and a French cop who have to team up because there's a serial killer that's committing murders across provincial lines, so they have to kind of team up, and it's a great kind of buddy cop comedy and a great look into just kind of Canada in general, and it's so funny, but and there's it even ties into the NHL at times. I mean, that's just so Canadian in and of itself. But it's funny because I go look back at the box office numbers in Canada. This came out in 2006, and I compare this movie to how blockbusters did. Usually in Canada, we really only watch American films besides Quebec. So about 99% of box office revenue outside of Quebec is from American films, whereas in Quebec, about only 90% is from American films. So they have this a little bit more of a market there. And I look at the 06 box office numbers in Canada, and this film actually it equaled pretty much what Infinity War would have got in 2018. Like that's how big this was in Canadian cinema here. And it made like $12 million globally, and about 11.8 million of that was in Canada. It's so funny, but it's on the Canadian Netflix. So I mean, if you're Canadian, you can check it out. And there's a sequel too, not as good, but Bon Cop, Bad Cop. It's just a great look into just some funny Canadianness. It's perfect.
All right, and then Nick, if you want to take it away with your final recommendation.
Yeah, so after I watched Sweet Virginia, I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like, we'll just go all in on Christopher Abbott movies. So I looked on his IMDb just to kind of see what, like, you go to that top part where it's like, oh, he's known for like these movies. Some of the time it's like kind of weird because like I know like Brad Pitt's like it's like known for like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is like no, like that's just not a thing. But for him, like the number one movie is a movie called James White. So like fuck it, and I looked up. It's free on Vudu, so anyone can just check it out with a Vudu account. But it is really really good. It is So this big movie, he stars as the title character, James White, and he's just like this 20-something living in New York who's just like not doing anything with his life. Like he still lives with his mom, and he's just like out at like clubs. Like he doesn't really have like any sort of direction in life. But I kind of all this kind of comes to a head when he has to take care of his mother who has stage 4 cancer. So I guess just kind of from like that description, you can kind of figure out where this movie's going. But it plays out so much better than that, where he has so much more depth as a character. Like he's not just like this asshole who's just not like, who just doesn't understand like how much like people need him or how he needs to like treat others. Like he has a lot of different things going on with him. He's kind of a dick, but he also clearly wants to do like good. And so it's really interesting watching him wrestle back and forth. And it's kind of an incredible performance because the camera just kind of zooms in on him. Like there's kind of just like close-ups of his face for most of the movie, and you just kind of just like see his little tics and kind of see like his like him like go through his thought process, and it's really fascinating to watch. But yeah, this movie's like, I think it's like 87 minutes, really quick on Vudu. It's really tremendous. It's an unbelievable performance. You know right from the start, like kind of where this movie's going to go. But watching him just play in this movie is just incredible.
Before I go into my final recommendation, do you guys remember movie theaters?
Remember places in general?
No.
So before all the movie theaters shut down, I think like Tuesday was when most of the big ones went down. Last Sunday, Turner Classic Movies did a screening of King Kong, the original 1933 version, and I went and saw that on the big screen. That was my first time seeing it ever, and that was just a fun way to spend an afternoon. The effects obviously don't look as good here 80 years later, but they still hold up really well, and it's just really interesting to see what they were able to do at the time. You're seeing a lot of matte paintings and screens and stop motion animation, but just how well they sell King Kong being this giant gorilla that's actually killing people. Some of it's a little laughable now that the curtain's been pulled back and we know how they accomplished a lot of this. But I think overall the movie really deserves its place, really deserves its status, and is just a really entertaining, really well done movie.
Yeah, that's a great film. That's one that I definitely have to revisit soon. I have it on DVD. Always a good one. The one I chose for my last recommendation is mid-90s. It's a film, obviously, came out a couple years ago, directed by Jonah Hill. It was his directorial debut. This is just a really good sort of look at, because I feel like we see a lot of period pieces going back to the 80s, 70s, 60s, and even a lot of movies just kind of contemporary taking place now. But I feel like we don't see a lot of 90s movies, and I find this movie to be one that is great to revisit. It's short. It's only I don't even think it's 90 minutes, but it's just a really good, sweet little intimate tale about obviously a kid kind of coming of age story in the mid 90s, and I just dig this movie so much. And it's so simple but yet so good, and everything comes around in the end. It's a really good one. Sonny Selchuk, who stars in this film, also he was in Killing of a Sacred Deer. He was good there, and it was great to see him get his first lead role in this movie. And he's only like 14 or 15 years old, so I hope he continues to be in movies, because he's a good young actor.
Yeah, mid 90s is one that I didn't catch when it was out, but I do want to get to it at some point.
Yeah, it's just neat to see Jonah Hill kind of branch out and start directing now, and I think it's a great debut for him. It kind of just tells you all you need to know about the vision that he's trying to encapsulate on screen.
Yeah, I love mid 90s, and I feel like it didn't really get like its like moment when it was in theaters. I feel like for some reason I feel like there was like a little bit of a backlash to that movie, because I think it's okay and like kind of getting like a little dirty with like its like main like with its lead character and Sonny Selchuk, which I feel like a lot of people were like, ooh, I don't know if like we should like go to this place with like kids in film, but I thought it was like a really like remarkable and like refreshingly honest look at kind of like growing up too fast. And I thought I really appreciated kind of how like intentionally messy it was, you know. Um, but yeah, I hope people would like check that out and that gets like a second life because I think it's really terrific, and I think Jonah Hill showed like a lot as a director in that movie.
All right. Well, those were our recommendations, and assuming that everything is still shut down for the next week, we'll have plenty more to go. I know I'm looking at finishing up my PTA binge and probably dive into some more older stuff this week. But other than that, we'll be back next week talking about more recommendations and Netflix top 10 and whatever other movie stuff we can figure out now that the box office is frozen. So remember, you can check us out online at MovieBabbleReviews.com.